The best part of the job is throwing the kids off the roof.
In the winter.
Yeah, in the winter.
Mountain Escapes, a backcountry podcast. Your host is Brad Harrison, who's worked and adventured in remote settings his entire life. He's the executive director of the Backcountry Lodges of British Columbia Association, former owner-operator of Golden Alpine Holidays, and current owner-operator of Call West Alpine Adventures. Now, here's Brad Harrison.
Welcome to another episode of the BLBCA's Mountain Escapes. We are here with Russell and Courtney Hulbert, owners-operators of Ice Creek Lodge, which is located in the West Kootenays, just north of Valhalla Provincial Park. How are things going, Russ and Courtney?
We're doing great. Thanks, Brad, for having us.
Doing really good.
Well, thanks for joining us. It's really great to have you on board. So we'll just talk a little bit about your lodge first. And many people probably have not visited Ice Creek Lodge. Can you let us know where you're located?
Just on the west side of Valhalla Provincial Park, the Selkirk Mountains, just kind of right between Nelson and Revelstoke, south of the town of Nakusp. Small little village of Burton is kind of our home base where we stage out of.
Can you give us a few details about your operation?
So we started Ice Creek Lodge in 2001. Is when we started to kind of break ground. I guess the process started long before that. We ran our first full season in 2003, and it's probably started out a little bit early for where our building was in the beginning. And of course, it's been a long journey since then, and it's come a long ways. But yeah, we've been in business now for about 20 years.
Did you build the lodge?
Yep. So built it from scratch, remote. There's no roads to our area. There was no trails or anything like that to our area. The easiest way to get in there was through Valhalla Provincial Park, about a 20K walk through the park. We built the lodge with a timber frame package that we flew up. We had milled on our own from down here in the valley, and we flew it up. And that structure was kind of 14 by 21 feet, and that's what we started with, 2-story with a loft. Pretty tiny space, but eventually we grew into a sauna structure and woodshed and some staff accommodation that was outside of that of the main lodge. But it was built by a bunch of friends, locals from our area. Great community and a lot of lifetime pass holders from that for sure. They still ski with us all the time and take a lot of pride in the place. So it's been a tremendous group effort.
Did you have to fly all the materials in by helicopter?
Yeah, the stuff that we didn't carry in on our backs once the trail got built. But yeah, we flew probably well over 90 loads of materials now at this point into the lodge. Building in a remote place like that is interesting. You forget something, you've literally got to run to the hardware store and get it. And you get pretty good with your lists, but there's always little things. And it's been such an amazing experience building. I think that's probably one of the more romantic parts of starting one of these businesses is building in an absolutely remote place. And in some cases from scratch, milling your own wood, doing a lot of falling of trees to clear the area. It's an incredible experience and long stints in the middle of nowhere underneath a tarp and in a tent. And as the winter rolls in, as you're trying to get ready to go is memorable.
I have seen him hike in a window on his back with a frame pack.
So do all the guests, if I came to visit you as a guest, would I fly in?
Generally, for winter use, we do helicopter access. So your gear and all your group members will fly in the helicopter. In the summertime, it's all walk-in via trail from Burton. But generally, we do a little bit of local traffic in the early season where people might walk in and we'll fly their stuff in on a supply load beforehand. But same thing happens with traverse parties and that sort of thing in the spring. For the most part, everybody flies in.
The scenery around the lodge must be amazing. What if I'm moving into your lodge for a week, what does the lodge look like?
Yeah, well, it's a cozy timber frame lodge. The view from the lodge is amazing. You got beautiful fall line terrain in all directions. You can ski right out of the lodge door, or you can run up the hill in a bunch of different directions. The lodge is located just below tree line, which is kind of nice, mid-mountain. It doesn't make for a long trip home at the end of the day if you drain a big long run. The lodge itself is It's got an upstairs with 3 bedrooms, anywhere from double to quadruple occupancy. The downstairs has another bedroom and then a really nice big open living room with a roomy bar and kitchen. The dining room is cozy and kind of group family style sitting. Most of the groups that come to our lodge come with their own group. We can sleep anywhere between 8 to 14 people, depending on how close you like it.
And so are all of the groups, let's pick on winter now because we're heading into the winter season, are all your groups guided?
Over the last, I would say, 15 years, we've slowly moving into more of a guided and catered package. It makes for a bit of a slicker trip operationally. For the most part, our groups have been with us for a very long time. Some of them I've been skiing with for more than 25 years. They've become really good friends. We do run almost exclusively guided packages, and our guides are just fantastic people. Most of them have been with us for well over 10 years, some of them close to 20 years. We've become really good friends with our clients. Really intimately, I don't get to spend a whole week of every year with a group of people. And doing that at a backcountry lodge, you get to know them really well. And it becomes quite a team spirit. So, yep, there's guides, there's folks in the lead, and they're out in front. Our crew has learned to work together with our guests and with younger guides and with our cook, and the whole thing just seems to flow really good. The more time you spend together in the mountains with groups and your clients, the stronger they get, and actually the more things you're able to do together as a group because you build a stronger team.
How large would your typical group be, and what kind of terrain could I expect to access?
We do everything from groups of, we have some groups that come back every year with anywhere between 6 to 7 and just book the place out exclusively because that's what they like to prefer. And then we have other groups that come every year with up to 14. And so we can take a big range, but my favorite is kind of 10, 11. And then we'll have 3 guides and 1 chef ratio. So we'll have 4 staff on to that group size. If we go to 14, we'll have another full guide on. But 10 seems to work really good for our lodge and the terrain and getting around with good flow and maxing out our days in the field.
And type of terrain, some tree terrain, an open terrain, or you got a bit of a mix?
Just about everything under the sun. Elevation-wise, we go from 2,800 meters down to just over 1,500 meters. So we're able to stay quite high. We've got a lot of alpine terrain, a lot of north-facing terrain. And then if need be, and it's hard to get around due to stability or weather concerns, we've got a ton of tree skiing close to home. So a good wide range, steep, gnarly, get your A game on stuff, lots of that, to more gentle north-facing alpine terrain. Most of our tree line terrain is steep, Kootenay-style tree skiing, for sure. Steep.
This is the BLBCA's Mountain Escapes podcast. Thank you for listening. And remember to rate, review, and subscribe on whatever platform you hear us on. Leave us a 5-star review and we'll maybe share some of our favorites on a future show. Now, back to the podcast.
Skiing aside, let's get to the important stuff. The food. What kind of food should we expect?
We've got some really cool folks that help us out with our food at Ice Creek. What we look for with our chefs, some of we've worked with for 30 years and have cooked with me in the bush and tree planting camps. And that's kind of like a really good sort of qualifier, is if you can do time in a bush camp, in a tree planting camp, and you can make that many people happy in the middle of nowhere when they're working that hard, then you're probably really going to crush it at a backcountry lodge. Our cooks have a really good way of reading our guests and seeing what their bodies need. Not everybody's diets and their needs are the same, and some folks need different things, and I get it, and so do my cooks. We are so blessed with the quality of food that we get. We fly from a farm in Burton, and we pick our eggs up the morning that we fly in. Our beef comes from that farm too as well. We've got some great grocery stores in the area that keep it as local as possible and work really well with our chefs. And they just do a great job of making sure that everybody has all the food that they need for their diet to get them up and down the mountain all day long, which is a bit of a big deal. It's important.
It sounds like you're able to get quite a bit of your food locally.
It's winter, so in the summertime, it's easier to get a lot of the produce and that sort of thing locally, where a large amount of our food it comes from our valley here, or the next valley over in Burton where our trailhead is. In the wintertime, it is of course a little trickier, but we are able to stockpile up on certain things. We have a new honey producer in our valley here, as well as some lamb that we can get from him too as well. More and more stuff is becoming available with a keen eye. Of course, your staples are still going to have to come from a bigger store, and we have to make trips to town for that. But whenever possible, yeah, we're always trying to do it local and support our local farmers. It's the best food anyways, really, right?
Yeah, and it probably helps limit your footprint on the environment. So if you look at your daily workflow, what are some of the most challenging or interesting responsibilities you have to deal with?
I mean, it snows a lot. You got to move a lot of snow, but that's kind of I guess, the greatest part of the job, and why we picked the place where we picked to have a lodge is there's a lot of snow. I guess if that's like the biggest, most daunting part of your day, then you're in a pretty good place, I would say.
I would agree. So very few people end up working in this pristine environment you have both ended up in. Or how did you start to build this remarkable facility? Where did you begin at?
I started in the industry in the mid-90s and got a start at a couple backcountry lodges in this area over at Carlisle, which was the Flint at the time, and at Valhalla Lodge too as well. And Leo and Brian and Jeff gave me some really great inspiration, and spent the next few years of my life looking hard and being a ski bum with a skidoo and a chainsaw and getting into all these really cool spots and trying to pick a place that was right and that community could agree with and see a benefit to being. Spent a lot of time banging on doors, talking to people and local residents, different user groups. The application process certainly wasn't easy, but a lot easier when you pick a good spot and you have local community kind of backing up what you're doing. So long process, started in the late 90s, and really we did not secure tenure until 2001-ish. That's kind of the least romantic or trickiest part. But that was the inspiration, and the start of it was seeing what was going on elsewhere and just really wanting to be a part of it somehow. Started the business with a good friend of mine who shortly after realized it probably wasn't for him, and he was able to move on. And then kind of enter my wife, Courtney, here, who I started in just after our first child. Started to do a little more active role in the business, and I certainly can't imagine doing this without her at this point. She kind of floats my boat, so to speak, and keeps us rolling at Ice Creek and everybody happy and organized. And she is now the rudder for sure.
Courtney, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Well, I'm just listening to that with a smile, because it was not an easy decision for me to jump into. I guess I kind of inched my way into the business after our first child was born, and now I absolutely love it. But I was definitely cautious going into business with my husband, but now it's just grown so much and provides our family such unique opportunities. Our son is 13 and our daughter is 10, and watching them in the summer run up to the lodge like it's no big deal, know their way around all of the buildings and all of the systems. And then in the wintertime, we get to take them up in the early season, usually over the holidays. And it's a part of them, that's for sure. It's their second home. And it's pretty cool where it's come, for sure.
The best part of the job is throwing the kids off the roof.
In the winter.
Yeah, in the winter.
It sounds like your family outings are pretty amazing.
Yeah, we have a good time, that's for sure.
British Columbia, Canada is a backcountry skier's paradise. With epic snowfall, vast alpine terrain, and cozy remote backcountry lodges. Your adventure begins here at backcountrylodgesofbc.com.
This is the Mountain Escapes, brought to you by the BLBCA. We are chatting with Russell and Courtney Hulbert, owners of Ice Creek Lodge. Welcome back. So both of you mentioned, we've talked quite a bit about your winter operations. Sounds like you have a summer season. How does that differ from the winter, say from a logistical perspective?
Well, our summer season is mostly lodge rentals. So we scale back on our guiding program. We do offer a few incredible guided traverses from the Valhalla Park and traverse over to the lodge, which is pretty spectacular. And we also offer groups to do self-guided trips hiking in from our Burton Trailhead, which is approximately 9 kilometers in length. And just to have a remote cabin for, their friends or family. There's a couple of lakes that are really accessible from the lodge. One is right next to the lodge, which we call Ice Lake. And then about a 40-minute hike from the lodge up to the Valhalla Park boundary is where the first of the Demers Lake chains is, and that's pretty spectacular. From there's so many different options for things to do. You can sit and enjoy the lake. You can go to different hikes from the lake as well. So yeah, it's a little more casual. We're not working with the helicopter, and the logistics are quite a bit less, that's for sure.
So what range of activities would your summer guests engage in?
Yeah, well, we do the Valhalla Traverse, which is pretty remarkable. They spend one night in the park and then 2 nights at the lodge. There's hiking, there's bouldering around the lodge. There is, our helipad is beautifully set for yoga. We do off-mat yoga retreats. There are paddle boards up at the lodge for people to use if they wish. Pretty incredible to paddle around a alpine lake. We usually get lots of girl trips, seems to be pretty popular in the summertime, stagettes or just girls getaways. Families up there, lots of kids can come up. And then, the climbing up there is endless.
And so, alpine supping, that sounds pretty cool to me. Do you find that your winter and summer guests are crossover people, i.e. do they visit you in both seasons?
Not typically. Usually our summer seasons are, I would say, more family orientated. And the winter time, we get a lot of groups talking about coming up in the summer, but they always want to secure their week of their winter season. So I think asking for another trip within the same year is tricky for them. Yeah, we don't see much of a crossover, no.
Do you think you feel like you're return visitor? You have a high percentage of return visitors?
Definitely, yeah, which is always a nice compliment.
So I'll throw a bit of a hardball question at you. So what do you think your guests, particularly the ones that return often, value most about their experience at Ice Creek Lodge?
The friendship for our winter guests is during COVID, they were our backbone. I couldn't have survived without them. They're good friends. It's our time together in the mountains to disconnect and just focus on health and mountain travel. And hammer, vert, and shred the gnar, right?
I'll have to add too that even first time Ice Creek guests come out after just being up there for the one time and feel like family. It's not always just the people who continue to come back and that we know well. We get to know these people just within that 7-day period really well, that they become our friends. I think it's because we have a really good connection. We make that a really big point to do. We talk about it with our team before trips. This is a huge part of it, is that connection. We include them in our morning process and all throughout the day. They're a part of it. So I think that's a big reason why people come back.
So I think you mentioned to me earlier that you have an adventure tourism tenure and you also have a park use permit from Valhalla Park. I was just interested to see if your close proximity to the park positively or negatively impacted your operation.
Working with parks has been great. We've never seemed to have had a problem and our challenges have been pretty limited there for the most part, I would say. We're far enough away from the park that it's easy to stay away with our helicopter. We can stay low, keep our sounds and our impact as minimal as possible there. We get travelers coming through the park, and we get visitors in the springtime from time to time. But I would say overall, having Valhalla Provincial Park right next door has been it's been an incredibly positive experience, Brad.
Because of the amount of people that you come in contact with and they look up to you, you're in a prime position to influence, many backcountry users. How would you like to positively impact those users as best you could?
I think being involved in your community and opening up discussions and trying to find common ground for all user groups is a pretty key part. But in the end, it's communicating, putting in some time, serving on a variety of boards, and working with different user groups and government folk, whether that's parks or rec sites and trails. Everybody has a key part to play, and not everybody always agrees. Coming to the table with respect, involving First Nations and understanding what that means with good intention. All these things play a big part. So both Courtney and I try to be as involved in a positive way in a lot of different areas, whether that's working with the guides and the ACMG, Lodge Association, local nonprofit societies that look after rec sites. Everybody needs a place to go. And as it gets busier, people need to talk more face-to-face if possible, less on social media, and look for positive outcomes and get away from conflict. If we can do that, I really think that all of us are going to move towards a better place and come up with a lot more solutions.
We're going to lighten it up here a bit, and before we sign off, Russ or Courtney, can you share something really funny that happened at your lodge?
I'm going to have to hand that over to Russell.
One that comes to mind was early on. It had to have been the first couple of years we were in business, and we had managed to hook Powder Magazine in for a quick trip to the lodge and to do a story on our place, and we were really excited about it, of course. And so, they came with a couple professional athletes and Mitch Scott writing, and then this awesome fellow named Dave that came to do some photos, and another fellow named Jeff that was doing the writing, and we had my dog too. This old husky he was my best friend. He was my dog, but he was a bad dog. I had to kind of caution everybody about this dog. At the time, this dog was 16 years old and like 110 pounds and would still manage to get out every day, if for nothing else, to steal someone's lunch. It didn't matter where we were in the tenure. He would come out, find us, hang out for a little bit, and take a nap. And out of a dead sleep, if somebody was throwing a chocolate bar or a piece of meat or something across the circle, he would snap it up and then waddle his way back to camp to hang out for the rest of the day. I was in the middle of giving my spiel to the guys from the magazine and had given my standard warning about my old husky dog, and used an example of his wit in that, you can see there's on the counter there, you guys have left a bun out while you were making lunch, and you can see that there's a whole bag of buns beside it. And given the chance, my dog will not take that bun. He will take the whole bag of buns. Just then, the old dog came busting into the lodge, looked at everybody, jumped up on the counter, took the whole bag of buns. And before we could catch him outside, that whole bag of buns was gone. It was his style. I loved him dearly, but he was a bad dog.
It's just been super amazing talking to you. And if listeners are interested in learning a little more about your operation, how would they best reach you?
They can go to our website, icecreeklodge.com. There's a contact us page there, or they can call us directly, 250-777-4234.
This has been the BLBCA's Mountain Escapes. We have been fortunate to visit with Russ and Courtney, owners and operators of Ice Creek Lodge, and we thank you for listening in. Take good care.
This has been the Mountain Escapes Backcountry Podcast, brought to you by the Backcountry Lodges of British Columbia Association. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, and YouTube. Produced by Bolt Productions. Thanks for listening.